Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's always my pleasure. So my favorite question to start off with is, what's your sober date?
Ha! I don't know if I know the answer to this, believe it or not, because my becoming sober was a progression, but it was around uh, the start of Christmas time, probably mid-December, 8 years ago. So we're talking 2016,
So
probably.
it's been 8 years. You haven't. What was your DOC? Was it drugs or alcohol?
It was mainly alcohol, but with that came
Cocaine.
the annihilation of my prefrontal cortex that meant I did other things as well.
And
So yeah,
we'll touch on that too. So it was
yeah,
mainly alcohol, and then you tapered down off of it.
I tapered down. Actually, my I went through a bit of a process. I knew that alcohol was getting on top of me. There'd been a lot of alcohol in the family, and I didn't like the way it was going. So I talked about it to a couple of friends and my wife, and my wife just said, sometimes group work can be really helpful, can be really effective because the group supports the group. And I thought, no way. I'm not sitting around with a bunch of people, doing my name is Tom and I'm an alcoholic type thing. I just thought that was it's not who I was. And I was wrong, and I did not specifically that, but I got in touch with a group. They said, how much you're drinking, what else you're doing, and I told them some of that stuff, and they just said, look, we can help you. You're in. Come and see us. And we round table with a bunch of other people, some of whom were 10 pound in British money, not weight, 10 pound bags of crack and heroin, and me sitting there going, I think I drink too much, but I was in. They accepted me. So I wound down my unit count in that group.
Yeah.
And I came off for about 8 months. Then I went to a party one summer and thought, well, I've done 8 months. That's all right. I kind of, I'm probably fine, aren't I?
I can have one.
Well, no, I didn't. I had no intention of having one. I was never a one person, Jenny. So by the end of that night, I reckon I was back up to my unit count. Genuinely, it was like I'd had a pause, and my body was happy with it, and loads of good things happened in my body as a result of stopping for those 8 months. But I was back on very quickly. I hadn't set any intention. I just didn't think about it at all, because I was probably still denying, still using it to cope, still in the process. I just had a break. So then there was a second time where I thought, right, I'm going to do this properly, and I'm going to find out. I'm going to use the techniques that I got from the group, and I'm going to wind down my units again. And I can do that. I can measure it, but this time I hired a counselor, which is kind of light touch psychotherapy in the UK, and as an accountability partner. So I had someone who I was checking in with, and we did a couple of other things during that process, such as understanding why I needed to do this, and some other techniques that I'll happily share.
That was weird. You there?
I'm here.
We just had a yeah, my laptop was acting funny for a second there.
Okay.
So you were talking about being in the process of getting sober?
Yeah, that's right. So that was so I came off for 8 months. I went back on that summer. I realized this was doing me no good. And I think it was that same Christmas, I thought, I'm out. I was going for a run one morning. I'm not a big runner, like 5, 6, 7K. It's all right.
Yeah.
Pair of trainers, get your ass in gear, get outside. And I had a hangover. And I was standing there about to do my run, and I just had this thought of, what's my point? What's my point with going for a run? What's my point in health? and if I'm still drinking and like to the point where my body's still feeling it days after, what's going on? And I also simultaneously realized that I had a kid who was a toddler, so she must have been 3 or 4, something like that, maybe 5. And my wife's father had just died a few months before, and I saw the effect it had on my wife, and I thought to myself, if I keep going the way I am going, my kid will not have me around in her 30s when she needs me. So I had this kind of flash forward.
Yeah.
And then I can only describe it like this sort of hot, like a feeling that went down, that sunk right through me into my stomach. And I just thought to myself, your life would be better off without booze, completely. And I knew that then. I couldn't shake the feeling. I couldn't just have this moment, and I thought, it's got to go. It's going. It's got to go. So I went through the process again, and I had this counsellor who was an accountability partner for me. My wife obviously knew, and yeah, it was by the time Christmas came around, I was off again, off the source completely.
Yeah. And where are you from originally?
I'm from Norwich in the UK, so in England. So if you could imagine what England looks like, it's got a little bump, looks like a kind of butt on the right. I live in the butt.
Okay. So you live to the you live in the east of you're east of London.
Yeah, slightly north of London. Yeah.
North of London.
Norwich, Norfolk. No, I don't get on with London that much, actually. It's fine. It's exciting. It's inspirational. When I was there last weekend, I saw a gig, right? Not like a big stadium concert. I saw a gig, 150 people downstairs, dark, cold, like a gig. It was really good, really good. So I like it for that kind of thing, but I'm quite quick to leave it. Not all that for London. Doesn't suit me.
Yeah. No, I feel the same way about Philadelphia.
Uh-huh.
I grew up 5 minutes from Philadelphia, and now when I go there, I'm more reminded of the times that I used to get high and drunk there, and it's hard for me to go back there and do anything there because of the destruction I caused.
Right.
I used to do stand-up comedy, and so I did comedy in Philadelphia, and I won't go back to those clubs, and I stopped doing stand-up altogether because I don't feel like being around a bunch of people who are drunk. So I stopped going to the clubs just because of the alcohol. Not because I was, I think, what happens is when you get sober, you think that you're not funny anymore.
Huh.
You think you're not creative anymore because you don't have that creative juice that you used to use. And I speak a lot in meetings. And, I go to NA. I literally just wrapped up a GA meeting before we hopped on for Gamblers Anonymous. And I share in every meeting. And my shares are serious. But at the same time, I'm trying to make you laugh. Because that's the one thing, just because we're in these rooms doesn't mean we have to be serious all the time. So my goal is to try to make people laugh. And that's my little version of doing stand-up now. Is sharing in these meetings for 5 minutes and trying to get you to giggle inside that 5 minutes. And I do these all day on weekends when I'm not working. And I love doing these because it's fine. It's finding the funny sometimes in our darkness and shedding some light on our darkness because, like they say in AA, we're not a glum lot. So, I like to make people laugh whenever possible because, or else it's going to consume us. The addiction is going to consume us. When did you discover alcohol? How old were you, Tom?
I was probably around 13, so 14 maybe. Parents left me alone one evening, just kind of went into the they had a spirits cabinet and probably made myself, a little glass that big, and then drank half of that and just thought to myself, wow, this is great. This feels amazing. It was like a mixed. It was like George's Marvelous Medicine of like all this bit of this and a bit of that, so the levels didn't go down. I think also my mother bought me a box of kind of quite weak lager that one Christmas, and she was a drinker. There was drink around. She was a smoker. There was cigarettes around. So that was my supply.
So your house had a lot of alcohol in it?
Yeah. You did enough so that I could do my bits without anybody particularly kind of noticing. And
So you
then,
were an only child then?
no, my sister was in the house as well. My father was working a lot. He was a doctor, and my sister was in the house, but we were quite sort of other ends of the house in our own rooms, sort of thing. So there was booze around, but then I quickly discovered that I like booze, and so I'd go out into Norwich, which is my local town, local city, and just have nights out there. And so, as with a lot of alcohol, it just started off being quite fun and quite a happy experience. But could also be a solitary experience.
Yeah, I was told that 18 what is the legal age. And, someone else from the UK said just because the legal age was 18 doesn't mean they were carding you at the door.
No, not at all. Let me give you some other numbers.
Yeah.
The legal age to give your kid alcohol at home is 5. And so the legal age to buy it is 18, but you can give I think it's a 14-year-old, might be 15-year-old. You can buy a drink for them with a meal in a restaurant out.
Yeah.
And so the other thing is that kids are exposed a lot, or I saw this, to alcohol, as a celebratory thing or a seasonal thing or a party event thing. And the adults are often just have a sip, don't tell anybody. So you have those forces of it being celebratory and happy, and the secrecy of have a sip but don't tell anybody, as if you're being invited into the club. So there was that. Now, in fairness, my parents weren't they weren't trying to give me lots of alcohol, but it was it was there.
Now, was your mom working? Your dad was a doctor?
That's right. So my mother was working until she had us, the children, right? And she stopped working. And I genuinely think that was a very hard experience for her. There was other family stuff going on as well that was quite difficult for her, extremely difficult for her. And there's no doubt that she had stuff to hide. She had stuff to mask. Nothing she'd done, emotions, pain.
Yeah.
And that was big in her life. And I imagine that there was some role modeling going on there. Also, it wasn't intentional booze giving, alcohol supply. It was more that kind of a coping strategy role modeled nearly every day.
Yeah. That's got to be rough. I know people in my life that are, growing up, in their 40s and 30s and 50s, and they had a career. Yeah. And then, they have kids and the husband's like, you stay at home and I'm going to work. And you watch the kids and like my mom, for example, my dad was like, he's old school. He's like, I'm going to work. I'll provide for the family. Don't worry. We're going to have money coming in. You stay home with their kids, and we won't have to do daycare. And, you can drive them to school and take them to practices. And, the mom is a full-time job, and it can be wearing, it can be it can be a lot for a mom to handle, because that's more than a full-time job. That's working 60 hours, 70 hours a week, on the clock, making sure everyone's good, making sure breakfast, lunch, and dinner is provided, and it's an intense job to have, and it comes with a lot of pressure.
Oh, right. God, yeah. There's more, JD, because actually, my father's a doctor. In those days, you didn't have medical secretaries. It would often be your partner, the wife, who would have to answer the phone, put the doctor in touch with the patients or the hospital or whatever, and that was unpaid. So not only have you got a situation, just as you described, where you're kind of restricted and trapped, and you've got to run the house and the children, you're also doing unpaid work during that.
Yeah.
And of course, it's all part of having the good home and, good kids, and we provide for you and you go to the good school and we want you to get good grades. We want you to be a good boy and we want to get you a good job. Right? It's good. Like, not far underneath the surface of those kind of homes. It's like, no, that's not the reality of the story.
Yeah, that's got to be a lot. I can't imagine. How old are you now, Tom?
So I am 48 now.
Okay, so you were growing up in the 80s then.
That's right. Yeah, odd socks, like neon socks, different colors, mate. Going around on my bicycle, pretending I was, in some gang.
Yeah. Now, once you discovered alcohol, it was game on. It was like, this is. When did your drinking progress?
Do you know, I think that I instantly drank to feel the alcohol.
Yeah, it wasn't too long for me. I discovered it. I discovered alcohol at 11, and by 12, I was drinking alcoholically. I was, my parents weren't alcoholics, but there was always leftover liquor from parties, and it was in my basement collecting dust. So I would steal a whole bottle, and my bedroom was in the attic. My parents never came up to my bedroom. So, and I had a walk-in closet because it was a redone. It used to be an attic and they redid it. And there was a window in the walk-in closet, and I would hide a bottle in there. I'd hide my cigarettes in there. I'd hide my ashtray in there. And I would go into my closet, put the towel down under the thing, and I would take shots this is 12 years old, man. This is 13 years old.
I get it.
13, because I started smoking when I was 13. And I would smoke a Black and Mild, or I would smoke cigarettes and just have my head out the window the entire time. And just smoking and drinking at 13 years old, just because I was numbing the pain of being bullied. And I was being bullied by my friends, my best friends.
Oh, man.
And I use quotations because, they think, oh, we're just busting balls. But like, that shit hurts. It hurts my feelings, and I would just drink to manage how I felt inside. And, I'm an alcoholic for 25 years. I'm sober for 5 years. I haven't had a sip of alcohol in 4 years and 9 months. And, coming up on 5. And I still think about, and I still talk about it. I talk about it a lot, but I feel like the more I talk about it, the less power it holds over me. When I hold in resentments, that's when I have a problem. That's when they're going to eat me alive. Resentments are like playing with fire and get upset when you get burned.
That's what the shame feeds off, right?
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons why I'm talking to you today, because I don't tell this story very much, and I think I need to let it out a bit. I need to let it go a bit. Yeah. Can I go back to you in your closet for a second? Because I had a wardrobe, and of course, mate, we must have been the only we must have been like, oh my God, no one's going to look in here. Right. Yeah. And all around the world, there's 12-year-old boys going, I think I'll put my cigarettes in here. I'll put my booze in there. Right. We might have been mates. We might have hung out with music, right? Had a cigarette together. If we'd have lived near each other, I'd have seen you and gone, look.
I saw you laughing a lot when I mentioned that story, and I knew you were relating to me when I mentioned that story.
But the other thing is that it feels so good. When you're having a difficult time in life, sometimes you know about why, sometimes you don't know about why. You find a way of feeling good, like physically really good. That's something you want to do again. And
I was hooked, man.
Well,
I was hooked. you know.
It's reasonable, isn't it? It's not just, oh, you made a bad choice. It's actually very reasonable that you were getting a kicking, literally or metaphorically, and you found something that made you feel good. My stuff, I'm not quite sure if I ever really got to the single root of it, but maybe it was to do with like a feeling of abandonment. I didn't have an fully neglectful child or anything like that. I have a lot of privilege. I'm very conscious about it, but there was some attention and emotional deficits that were quite hard, and loneliness.
Yeah, it was. I can look back to 12 years old, and a friend of mine was hit by a car and he died. And I remember saying to my one friend, "Hey, if we drink, we're gonna feel better." Like, I can recall exactly those words. We walked about 3 miles to go to his grave, and we were really upset. And on the walk back, I said, if we drink better, we're gonna feel better. If we drink, we're gonna feel better. And he came to my house. We went up into my closet where I had a bottle hidden, and we both took shots, going back and forth, handing the bottle, just taking a swig, hand it over, having like a Coke next to us to chase it down, and taking shots at Captain Morgan, and and going back and forth with this liter bottle, and just the handles with the lead. I think liters have handles, right? And just numbing the pain, man. It was the escapism. I always talk about my addiction is more, more, more. And it didn't matter what the substance was, whether it was alcohol or drugs or gambling, sex, love, eating. I'm addicted to the word more.
It was, right. That's hard. It's powerful. It was never about the poison, right? It was about the pain.
Yep.
And I came across, a few things have come and gone in my life. Some drugs, relationships. Gambling wasn't one of mine, but it was all about the hit.
When did you discover drugs?
Around that time, probably being in a band, a bit of pop, and that probably stayed with me. So here and there, being part of a group.
Is that weed?
Yeah, no. I used to have. So it was resin back in that day. Weed was very rarely about in the UK. Early 90s, it was much more about the resin. I never hit, when I went to university, I never hit a drug scene. So I got through school. I got through, went to kind of college, university, and then it was always just booze. And there was pot, but there was also relationships. So I always needed to have a girlfriend, always needed to have was on that kind of chase for that hit. And that, they just happened to be mine for that particular period of time.
Yeah. I never really had a relationship in my I had a 3-year relationship in my 10 years of addiction to opiates, because at 22 the alcohol stopped working and I switched to opiates.
Okay.
And I'd been drinking alcohol for 10, 11 years at this point. 21 is the legal age in Jersey and Pennsylvania or whatever, US. So I really amped up my drinking when I turned 21 at the bars. And by the time I was 22, I was just tired of alcohol and I needed something better. And I discovered opiates, and I put alcohol to the side and I went nosediving into opiates for 10 years.
Wow. Did you stop alcohol? Did you stop alcohol completely, or is it always there if you wanted it?
It was there. Like, if I went to a family function, I would be high, but I would like nurse and sip a drink so that if people saw me drunk, if people saw me high, they would just chalk it up to being like, oh, he's drunk. But really, I was high on pills, and I was masking that with, alcohol. Now, I had a 3-year relationship with one of my childhood best friends. She took her life 9 years ago, and after she passed away, I went into drinking hard for a year, drinking 7 nights a week, doing cocaine all the time. I moved 7 hours away from where I'm from to North Carolina, and I lived there for a year. And the entire year, I drank every single night because I was trying to grieve her death. And I didn't get into another relationship for 5 years later until I met my wife. And I wasn't ready. I didn't want to have to go through another like relationship that ended so badly, and my addiction was so bad I didn't want to drag anybody else down with me. So I chose not to be in relationships after that
Yeah.
one failed. And because it not just failed, it failed miserably. In my opinion, that's the worst way for a relationship to end, is someone taking their life. I don't care what someone says, cheating on, whatever. And if you get cheated on, you can still call that person and have a conversation. Somebody told me after she died, I don't talk about this a lot. I don't think I've ever talked about it on this show. Someone said to me, I get you. This person was cheated on a year before that. And this person said to me, I understand how you're feeling, blah, 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 with blah, blah, blah. And I understand what you're feeling because I've been there. And I went, okay. But in my head, I went, fuck you. You know what I mean? Fuck you. You don't relate to what I'm saying. You don't understand what my brain's going through right now. I have guilt on my my hands. I can't call to find out why she did it. She didn't leave a note. Is it because of me? Did I do something wrong in a relationship that she needed to end it so quickly? She hid her engagement ring in my dresser, and I found it 3 weeks after she passed. So it was a plan that she had set. And I remember the last time we were together, that night she snuck into my dresser and put the engagement ring. And I found it 3 weeks later. You know how much guilt comes with that shit? And that stuck with me for 5 years until I did the steps the first time. The first time I did the steps, I'd let go a lot of guilt, a lot of anger, a lot of pain that came with it. But in that moment when that person said it to me, I was just like, fuck you. You don't understand. You can make a phone call and talk to that person, even if it's a bad conversation. You can still call that person. You might even get a second chance with that person. And so I went through so much thinking like that I didn't want to get into another relationship for a long time.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I can't claim to imagine. And
no, and not a lot of people can. And it's, suicide, I was ready to kill myself at the end of my addiction. And I would always bring my dog in the car with me whenever I was, driving anywhere, because I knew I wouldn't drive into a tree if she was in the car with me. So she was my safety net in case I had a fleeting thought of go off the road right now.
Yeah, she was.
Because those thoughts started entering my head. So I started bringing my dog with me. This way I was less likely to do it. And, but at the end of the day, I didn't want to do that to my family. I didn't want to leave like that and have my family wonder if it was an accident or real. So I never went through with it. And someone said early in my sobriety in a meeting, they said, I didn't want to kill myself. I just didn't want to be conscious anymore. And that made a lot of sense to me. I'll say that until the day I die, because that made so much sense to me in that moment. So you were Tarzan in relationships, right? You were going from one relationship to another. It's like I call that a Tarzan relationship guy.
Yeah, so the dopamine from that relationship would last maybe 18 months. Might sabotage a relationship, have multiple non-consequential encounters in between, then find somebody and go, okay, this is the one, and then repeat that. So that changed when I met my wife. But yeah, relationships was part of my was part of my coping as well. And when you talk about that kind of, I don't want to kill myself, I just want to be unconscious. There's such a flood, isn't there, of addiction will give you such a flood of stuff that you don't act consciously, and it can be a disengaged, or maladaptive coping, something that's going to numb or block you or avoid. But love can do that a bit. Love would perform that job for me. I don't. It's that powerful a drug. When I met my wife, though, it did feel very different, and it was during the time with my wife that I felt that I could, because I, remember I mentioned things like abandonment and emotional neglect and the bits of that.
Yeah.
She provided quite a lot of that. Sorry, she was the antidote to quite a lot of that. She met a lot of my unmet needs, and for which I'll be forever grateful. And that's probably gave me the context where I could shed the other stuff that I was doing, because I could, I just felt a bit more conscious and comfortable with being conscious because there was somebody there for me.
That makes a lot of sense to me. That I can see. And you wanted to be present for your wife, and you wanted to show up. And does she drink, or no, just you?
Okay, so more plot coming your way. We are now divorced, but we're friends, and we're really good about it. We can talk about stuff, so it's all good. She did drink, and during the time, but never hard, and not every night. So she'd have 2 or 3 glasses and think, "Oh, I've had a bit too much," and leave it there. But I was never like that. And during the time when I was winding down my units and coming off, she said, "Do you need me to stop as well?" To which I said, "No. This you need to do what you need to do, because you need to do it. I need to do this. This is what I'm doing for me, and I need to be able to cope in a house where there's alcohol. It's not the alcohol. It's my relationship with it, and I need to figure out what's going on there. And if I work that out, you can do whatever you like." So there was, there's still wine in the fridge. There was still whatever, and that's still fine now. I'm okay to be around alcohol now. I'm not okay to be around very drunk people. So I will attend parties, gigs, whatever, but I reserve the right to go 10 o'clock when people start slurring, or the smell changes, the people repeat themselves. And I'm gone. I'm out. So everyone can do what they like. That's absolutely fine. But I reserve the right to go, "I'm going home, thanks."
I do the same thing. I just did that at my niece's first birthday. I drove 2.5 hours to be at my niece's first birthday party. And, my sister knows how to throw a party. And so she had a keg, and her husband had a keg. And it was all good. I can be around beer. I've been to weddings. I was the best man at my brother's wedding. I was a groomsman at my sister's wedding, and an open bar at both weddings. And I didn't feel the need to get drunk or anything. And I didn't feel the need to go over to the open bar. And, I sipped on water the entire night.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel the need. I didn't want to get a soda because that would have been too close to liquor. So I chose not to go to that bar, and I would just get water. And at my sister's house, they had a keg, and I knew it was about time where they were going to start playing beer pong and like flip cup and start playing the games. And I was there about 2 hours. I said goodbye to everybody, and I got on the road, and I drove 5 hours round trip to be there for 2 hours. So, but it was nice. I got to see my mom, and I got to see, my sister and brother-in-law, my brother and sister-in-law and their families. So I got to hang out for a little while and see everybody, because I don't make it to Jersey often. I try to stay away from New Jersey. New Jersey's toxic to me. It's just and I try to stay out there as much as possible.
The one I'm laughing is because when you're at a place and everyone's drinking, and then they start to do stupid stuff, you kind of go in your own head, because they wouldn't understand it. I'm sober, so the stuff you're doing is stupid, but I'm not there. I'm not there with it at the moment. I mean, occasionally I might do. And some of the nights where I've done my most ridiculous dancing for as long as possible, I've been completely sober. But ordinarily, I'll go like, you just do the silly thing in the knowledge that you're having fun, and I'm not anymore. And also, I'm not thirsty, because I'm not dehydrated by the alcohol, and I've had water, so I'm fine. I don't need more drinks. You're like, it's
Totally
okay.
relate.
Don't have to have a drink in my hand all the time.
Yep. Totally relate to that, Tom. That's
but you showed up. You massively showed up for yours. I think I'm much more present when I do stuff.
Yeah.
5-hour round trip. Niece's first birthday. Great.
I was, I was in Jersey maybe 2 hours, and I hadn't been to Jersey since my dad died. So it was rough coming back to Jersey, because that was, my best friend. And, I lost him last July or June. And then I relapsed a month after he passed. But I didn't relapse on alcohol, and I didn't relapse on opiates. I talked my psychiatrist into giving me Ativan, and then I abused it. And then I talked him into giving me Valium, and then I abused it. So, and then I quit. I was smoking weed all day, every day. And, eventually I said, I got to stop all this. Well, my wife told me. My wife noticed how low my pill count was. And, my wife was like, you're not sober right now. And then it hit me like, I'm not sober. You're right. And I got to start over. So I quit the benzos, and I quit smoking weed. And, that's been since April 1st. And, it's tattooed on my arm, Progress, Not Perfection. It's the name of this podcast, Progress, Not Perfection.
Okay, yeah.
So it's kind of a mantra of mine, since that was the first tattoo I got when I got out of rehab, was Progress, Not Perfection. And that was 6.5 years ago. So, it's something that means a lot to me. It's on the inside of my arm, and it's right side up for me and upside down. If you're looking at it, it's upside down. But to me,
makes sense.
But to me, it's right side up, because that tattoo is for me and not for you. And I get them upside down a lot, because I don't care if you think I did it wrong. That's not for you. That one's for me. I got a couple of tattoos that are for you, but some of mine are upside down because they mean more to me that way. So
that's interesting. I haven't got any tattoos, JD. I don't think I could decide what to have and where.
I have 55 now. I
55.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think that could be one of your things?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I had one tattoo 6.5 years ago. So, it's escalated. It's escalated, 1 to 55 in the last 6 years. My wife has a tattoo gun, has a tattoo machine.
Right. Okay.
And she's giving me like 10, 12 of them, just like laying in bed, giving me a tattoo. They're all on my arms. They're all small. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay. That's pretty good. I was imagining she, like
I don't have a sleeve.
Do the dishes, put the bins out, that kind of thing. But they're good.
Yeah,
there's an artistic merit in that. Right?
Yeah, right now she's painting. She loves to paint. But we all have our different hobbies. This is my hobby. I don't get paid to do this podcast. I don't make any money doing this podcast. I do it strictly. It's a sober hobby and a way to give back to the community. In AA, they say a meeting is two alcoholics having a conversation. So I try to keep it that way, because this is my meeting. I have a meeting all day when I do these. So, but
I think creativity is really, really helpful. And when you said earlier on about the fact that, your comedy was fueled by your drink and other people's drink, and you lose the drink, you lose the comedy, or you did, I felt that I lost quite a bit of who I was and who I was with, but I didn't need those bits of who I was and who I was with. And I've now recrafted who I am and who I'm with, largely. And I'm really good with that. So you do things like this podcast. I make films. So I do mental health in workplaces. I'm not clinical therapeutic, but I advise organizations and I do talks and training. And there's definitely like an outlet, like a creativity and a much sort of stronger link to the purpose in the stuff that I do.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you do for your recovery.
Yeah. So what do? I have quite a lot of opposite activities to my work. So I like cooking. I run a supper club for strangers. So I get people around who don't know each other, 10, 12 people, cook them a 3-course meal. And I do a little bit of like camping and sea swimming, and I'm quite, bodyboarding, a little bit of that. I went through a period of thinking that I had to do things like walk on hot coals and jump out of airplanes and that kind of stuff. But that was during drinking time. I think, in fairness, that wasn't really doing it for me either. It was just another form of trying to do something crazy for a hit, but and raise money for charity. But I have stable relationships now. That's one of the things I do most, and I'm not seeking the hit of further relationships or even porn or anything like that. It just doesn't really fit to the stability of where I'm at. I have a new partner. I've had a girlfriend of a year and a couple of months. She's an outstanding woman. We click. She's there. She's present. She's smart. She's funny. She's hot, and she really does a lot of things for me. And that's, you kind of hope that you'd get most of those things in a new partner. But my ex-wife, we are friends. We are considerate. We're generous to each other. There's a stability there as well. Interestingly, I don't seek that same kind of stability and communications and stuff from some of my family, my immediate family. They're still around. They're there. We hang out occasionally. We do some stuff together. They're lovely people. They're generous people. But I still don't find that's the home for some of my emotional needs to be met.
Yeah.
They never were. And when I go chasing that, I trip up. I don't relapse, but I trip up on that kind of emotional kind of shit. I thought you were there for me. Oh, of course, you're not in the way that I want. If I fall out with my sister, I'm expecting, as I did recently, I was expecting resolution from her, and I was expecting justice from my father, and none of it. I shouldn't have bothered. So some stuff still runs deep, but I like being creative. I like cooking. I like films, and I'm trying to get creative in my work.
That's awesome to hear, man. I'm glad you're finding some things to, fill your soul and feed your soul. And stuff like that is going to keep you sober. Cooking for random strangers.
Yeah, nice.
That's
yeah. They're not totally random. I know them kind of through Facebook or whatever, but sometimes I don't know them when they show up. And I have therapies. So yeah. I don't do 12-step and I don't do meetings, but I regularly, when issues come up, when I feel there's enough stuff to come up, I will seek facilitated conversation with somebody.
Yeah, I do therapy too. I have a therapist and a psychiatrist. I see the therapist every Wednesday, and I see the psychiatrist once a month. And that's another form of escape for me, is to just unload, in those meetings. And I'm a big advocate for therapy. Like, you should check out a therapist and get into that. So
I completely agree. But you say it's another form of escape for you, but it's quite engaged, right? You're in the subject. It's not disengaged.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's great.
So,
I think I just think it's brilliant. I think that the good therapy is so good for people.
yep.
And it says a lot about somebody when they don't want to open the cupboard door. They don't want to go there. It says,
Yeah.
I find it, I have to try and empathize with somebody because their stuff must be so big or ghastly that it's too scary for them. If they open the door, all the stuff's going to fall out on them. But mine's more seasonal. So you go every like Wednesday and once a month.
Yep.
That's where that's your that
Yep.
works for you.
I do every other Wednesday one-on-one with my therapist.
Yeah.
And then every other Wednesday, my wife and I do marriage counseling together. And we didn't have really anything going on that was wrong. We just are both such advocates for therapy. We figured we'll keep our relationship even stronger by doing it together. And they can't bill my insurance twice in the same week. So that's why I do every other now. I switch off every week. Like next week, it'll be with my therapist, and the week after will be with the counselor. And we get a lot out of those meetings and those sessions. I should call them sessions. So yeah, I love therapy. I'll tell anybody, even if they're not an alcoholic, even if they're not an addict, like do therapy for yourself.
It's fascinating, and definitely in couples. So my partner now is training to be a counselor, therapist, and I did say to her the other day, because as part of that training, you've got to go through therapy yourself. And I think she's getting quite a bit out of that process. She didn't think she was, but she is, and that's good. And I said, what about couples? As I'm an advocate of couples therapy, and I think that I wish that with my wife we'd entered into a process before there were problems. I think it's a really grand thing that you are doing.
Yep. Yeah, it's been working really well for us.
And I don't see a problem in being securely addicted to your partner.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
We're very happy. Our marriage is in a really good place, and it's working for both of us. So, and just sounds like you and your partner are on the same page, and it's working for you too.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm able to share everything, like from the bottom of my heart, and difficult stuff, and it's a completely safe space to do that with her. So that's awesome. Good. Oh, I also have some mantras that I say to myself still 8 years later. So sometimes I get, it's not really to do with what we're talking about, but you asked originally, like, what did I do to help my recovery? I say stuff to myself, and it's when I get those thoughts that, like, the pre drinking thoughts.
Yeah.
So it's not I'm going to have a drink or I'm going to go to a shop and buy some. It's a kind of, oh, this would be nice if I felt higher, or this would be, this could be better. And I just check myself and go, whoa. You're better off without booze. That's mine. And the other one I used to use, I haven't told anybody this, but I'll tell you, which is, I only need myself to be happy.
I like that.
My first therapeutic kind of intervention when I didn't know what the hell was going on. And I was basing a lot of my esteem on other people liking me, particularly in relationship. And I realized I didn't need to do that. And that, for me, from within was where I needed to work on that internal locus. I think it's the fancy pants term, isn't it? And that was helpful for me. So those two things are very helpful for me, that I only need myself to be happy, and I'm better off without booze.
Yeah, the happiness thing, it strikes a chord with me, because early on, 6 years ago, I was really down when I was first coming off the drugs and detoxing. The first few days, the first week, I was really going through it because I was going unmedicated, coming off 10 years of opiates and 20 years of drinking. And I said to, he's now a good friend of mine, I said, I'm just not happy. I'm just not happy. And he said, well, that's up to you. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, happiness isn't a feeling, it's a choice. And you can choose to be happy or you can choose to be upset, but it's your choice that you're consciously making. And that blew my mind. I always thought happiness was a feeling that you get. And when he told me it was a choice, it flipped the switch.
It's big, isn't it? Some of those moments that seem small, but you kind of go, wow.
Yeah.
That moment where you can flick a switch. I think I agree with him up to a point. I think it takes practice to get to that right.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Particularly when life has been giving you a kicking and you've got lots of data to suggest that actually you're having a bad time. But to just try and regard these events as sometimes more neutral than you think and go, what am I going to do with this? Because I can't change the event, but I can change what I think about it.
Yeah.
There's a bit of Buddhism in there.
Yeah.
It
was great talking to you, Tom.
I've had a good time talking to you, JD.
Yeah, I'm glad to connect with you. It's fun talking to somebody in a different country. I've done countless UK, countless Canada. I've done Costa Rica, Colombia, 2 from Australia, 1 from Ireland, 1 from Scotland, 1 from the Netherlands. I've hit a lot of different countries, and Germany. I forgot Germany. So I like hearing the stories, and I like how we can connect and we can have things in common, thousands of miles away, and we're able to say, "That's me. I did that too." And I find it important, if one person's watching this and they're connecting with something I said or something you said, now the stories are being shared intercontinentally. And I really like that. So it's always good to have somebody across the pond on the show. And I appreciate you, bud.
I appreciate you being here. And I am learning to let in people who and just feel some of the fact that they're feeling and they're empathizing with me.
Yep.
That it means a lot. And you are reaching out to people and you're doing a good thing. And you've provided a safe space and a platform for me to share my story. And I am very grateful.